Embark on an immersive journey through the cosmos at Our Tech House, Houston's original destination for cutting-edge interactive digital art and experiences you won't find anywhere else. Our Tech House is the perfect spring break activity for the whole family, and from March 10th through the 16th, admission for kids is free, while adults can enjoy drink specials all week long at the Our Tech House XR Bar. My daughters loved it, and I can't wait to go back as well. Located in the Heights, just off the MKT Trail, visit ourtechhouse.com to learn more and purchase your tickets today. Looking for a fun, safe, and unforgettable summer for your child? Camp Champions has been a top overnight camp since 1967. Located on beautiful Lake LBJ just outside of Austin, they offer exciting activities, the best trained counselors, and a focus on building strong kids. Sessions range from 1 week to 4 weeks, and Camp Champions is open to ages 6 to 17 years old. They're going to help campers grow in confidence, make lasting friendships, and have the highlight of their summer. Summer 2025 kicks off June 1st, so learn more at campchampions.com. Today on CityCast Houston, Harris County Attorney Chrisitan Menefee has become a key figure in the fight against President Donald Trump and his executive orders. He's joining me to talk about why he's taking such an aggressive approach and what he thinks local Democrats should do next. It's Monday, March 10th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Hey, Chrisitan, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk to you. So, Chrisitan, tell me, you've been very aggressive in fighting those executive orders from President Trump. How exactly are you doing that?
We've been heavily involved in the legal fight. President Trump, since the day that he took office, started issuing executive orders, many of them that would have an unprecedented impact in our country. They've frozen trillions of dollars in federal grants that flow directly to local governments and nonprofits. They've issued an executive order that turns 200 years of precedent on its head by saying that people are not citizens if they're born in the United States of America. They've issued nonsensical executive orders purporting to ban diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout various levels of government. When people are in the White House and they step outside of the bounds of the law, I think it's important to hold them accountable in the courts. So we've been active in the lawsuits that have been filed, and we plan to continue to do so.
I mean, everything you just mentioned, that is so much, right? And it seems like it's one of those fights that you just have to slowly chip away at, I guess. So how do you even tackle this, like overall?
It's a national effort. There are attorneys general in states across the country. There are legal advocacy groups like the ACLU. There are nonprofits. Everybody is working in tandem to try to hold the Trump administration accountable. But Raheel, it's important when you say that's a lot, that is by design. The Trump administration has been intentional about doing everything they can to roll out as many things as possible, as quickly as possible. So no one governmental entity, no one elected official could take this fight on. And that's why you're seeing at every single level of government, federally with members of Congress, at the state level with attorneys general and governors, and then at the local governmental level, every single level of government is standing up and doing what they can to get involved in this fight.
Are you feeling overwhelmed?
No. I wake up early every morning. I, start off with a good breakfast, and we're off to the day. President Trump is doing many things that are unprecedented, but I think our response has to match the energy that he is putting forth when he rolls out these executive orders. We don't have time. We don't have the privilege to get overwhelmed, to get exhausted. And frankly, we're 2 months in. So if I'm overwhelmed already, I might need to get into a new business.
That's so true.
We have a long road ahead of us, and I'm down for the fight.
Now, when you start fighting back against President Trump and things that are happening on the national and federal level, immediately I started thinking, like, is this going to take away from your quote unquote regular work that could be helping the city? Is that the case?
No. And we've already gotten a question or two like that from media, and often hardcore right-wing folks, the very same folks who support Ken Paxton every single time that he sued President Joe Biden, are now like, we don't want our taxpayer dollars going to this. But they don't understand that this is part of the job. If a president is freezing hundreds of millions of dollars potentially that are going to flow into Harris County government, and that's going to be part of our budget. It's my job as the lawyer to help protect those funds that were properly appropriated by Congress. If the law bars the president from doing that, then it's my duty to get involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
If the president is passing a DEI ban that could impact what type of companies we hire to do business with when we're spending federal dollars, it is my job to get involved in that. The county attorney's office is a big office, about 300 folks. We do a lot of things, and 99.9% of the things that we do never, ever make the news. But there are fantastic people who do that work. And, we are keeping the train moving at all points in time. These battles that we're having with the federal government now is by virtue of the decisions that the president is making. I tell people all the time, we're playing defense. And we're playing defense with dollars that are supposed to be flowing to Harris County. So the short answer is no, it's not taking away attention from the other work that we do. And I think that governmental leaders at every level of government have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
I want to talk more about your job. And, you mentioned that huge office, over 300 employees right there. And your job as Harris County attorney, I've heard you joke that it's the largest department that no one knows about. So what exactly do you do?
There's three things that we do primarily. One is we are the legal department for Harris County government. That may not sound like that big of a job, but Harris County government is about 18,000 employees. So we're talking about a large corporation here. And we're the legal department. So anytime there's a contract to be drafted, there's a deal to be negotiated, anytime one of our department heads or elected officials has a major decision that they want to make and they want to know if it's within the confines of the law, they come to the legal department for guidance, right? We help usher them through that process. We talk to them about the risks legally, and then ultimately they make the decision. The second part of our job is whenever the county or its elected officials or its employees get sued for things relating to the job, we represent them in the lawsuits. So that is a very heavy job that we do, right? Because people are always filing lawsuits. So there's always issues that you have. And then the third bucket, I would say, is really a hodgepodge of various things across government. We have a team that is an environmental team that is really taking on environmental enforcement for this area. In the county, I'd say they're the chief environmental enforcement team that's out there that are suing companies when they have plant explosions because they forgot to do something or they did something wrong. We are legal counsel to Harris Health, which is our public hospital system, which is a huge organization that encompasses Ben Taub, LBJ Hospital, and a number of community health systems. We have so many teams that do so many things. But the best way I can explain it to folks is we're the lawyers for the county. And then there are times where we have legal authority to go after companies, to go after levels of government, to go after government officials when they do wrong by our communities.
Gotcha. And we're going to talk more about the healthcare system. We're going to talk more about environmental justice and what exactly is happening right now. And one other note, you're not the district attorney. That's Sean Tier. That's a totally different office. Okay. A lot of people get confused with that sometimes.
First time I ran for office in 2019, I had to include it in my stump speech because most people had never heard of the county attorney before. Yeah. So I would say, hey, I'm Chrisitan Menefee. I'm running for Harris County attorney. I am not running against Kim Ott, who was the district attorney at the time. Most people, when they interact with a government official that has the word attorney in their name, they're dealing with the criminal system. So importantly, the county attorney's office, we only do civil work. We don't prosecute any crimes, no misdemeanors, no felonies. If you have a court date over something on the criminal side, it has nothing to do with me. I am not involved in that in any way.
And Sean Tier's been on the podcast before, so we're very familiar with him as well. On those executive orders, there have been a lot, like you mentioned, they are flooding the market, like that's the best way to put it, with these executive orders, the Trump administration. Have those already impacted our daily life, or what potential impacts can we see here in the upcoming weeks or months?
They've absolutely impacted our daily life. And I'd say in a few different ways. If you are someone whose parents are immigrants and, may have been in this country on a temporary legal status, Donald Trump would argue that in certain circumstances, you're no longer a citizen if you're born in this country, which again turns hundreds of years of legal precedent on its head and just changes the way that we understand who is and isn't a citizen in this country. At the county, we're already seeing major changes with programs that we were told pencils down on, right? Grants totaling in the tens of millions of dollars that were awarded by the federal government. And then the grant portal opened back up, and then it was closed again. And then we were told, okay, it's back up, right? Just an everyday uncertainty because of the instability of the Trump administration. But I would say the biggest impact that Americans are going to see is the diversity, equity, and inclusion ban, where the president is saying that for the federal government, they're no longer going to consider race and how they contract. But what's important there is it's not just what's happening in the federal government; it's the message that that sends to the private sector, right? If you're the leader of a Fortune 100 company and you have for years done business with the federal government or with some other governmental entity, and you see that President Trump has said that DEI programs are racist and are not representative of the America that we know and love, what's your next step going to be? Potentially to get rid of your own internal programs that were intended and created to address systemic racism. So I would say Americans are already kind of bearing the brunt of this. And not to mention all of the questions about whether Medicare was going to be cut, whether Social Security was going to be cut. I think what we've seen, the theme of the day for the Trump administration has just been incompetence and how they've rolled this stuff out. It has not been thoughtful. It has not been methodical. It has not been calculated. It has been incompetent. And the best evidence of that is that half the time, the left hand has no clue what the right hand is doing within the Trump government.
I mean, you just laid out a lot, so let's jump into each one and dig a little bit deeper because, I'm curious like how this fight is going. The first one I want to start with is, I saw that, from the jump that you joined that federal lawsuit against Trump's order to end birthright citizenship. Where does that fight stand right now? Because it is, as you mentioned, impacting a lot of Houstonians, one with just that overall fear, right? It is so scary. Like what happens, right? And why was it so important for you to join that?
In thinking about that, and in thinking about people who have been born in this country and who, respect the rule of law, pay taxes just like anybody else, and how they are now being treated differently under the law, not because the law has changed, not because the Constitution has been amended, but because Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Stephen Miller woke up one day and took a different position than legal precedent and then the vast majority of American citizens. It was important to me to step in and participate in that legal fight. We immediately saw lawsuits that were filed by attorneys general from across the country. And we wanted to be a part of that effort because we know that Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the entire country. We have people who speak hundreds of languages here in the city of Houston. And each of those folks, whether they were born here, their parents were born here, their parents immigrated, they should be able to feel the benefit of American citizenship in the same way that people in their exact same situation did 10 years, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But importantly, ending birthright citizenship is just not a popular position. And that goes for even here in the state of Texas. We have around like 50% of folks are in no way in favor of ending birthright citizenship. But when you kind of get deeper into the analysis and tell people, hey, this is baked into the 14th Amendment, it's a clear majority of people are saying, no, of course we don't support repealing part of the 14th Amendment that deals with birthright citizenship. So it's grossly unpopular. It flies in the face of legal precedent. And it was important to us to stand up and say that.
And by the way, Stephen Miller, he's the White House Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security Advisor to President Donald Trump. He's the architect of Trump's immigration policy. So in terms of fighting this legally, how long could this all take? Is there a certain date, or is this just, fight it and figure it out as we go?
It's just keep fighting it. The courts are unpredictable. You never know when it's ultimately going to make its way up to the United States Supreme Court, but it's been through the trial courts, like on an expedited basis. It's now in a court of appeal. I believe that the Supreme Court will take this question up. Just because it impacts so many Americans, just because it's an issue of pure constitutional interpretation. But the status quo is that the order is not, it doesn't have any legal effect because the court has ruled that it's unconstitutional.
All right, let's go to those federal grants that you mentioned that have been frozen. And we've talked about this on CityCast Houston plenty, how Harris County is waiting for $600 million in federal grants that have been frozen right now by the Trump administration, and also dipping into the reserve to fund those programs, hoping that those are paid back eventually in a rebate. But right now, how is this impacting Harris County and what are you doing about it?
The biggest challenge for local governments is trying to decipher what the Trump administration is trying to convey, which types of programs they think are problematic, and you should not spend money related to those programs. Originally, remember, this all started when these executive orders were issued, and then there was a memo that was issued that said a number of things, but effectively, if you have a program that is related to these executive orders, then that money cannot be spent in a way that is in violation of these executive orders. And of course, that leaves interpretation to the grantee, right? So the question becomes, does this solar program potentially violate President Trump's order unleashing American energy? And that's a direct quote. Does this hiring of this company violate President Trump's order banning diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring? Every day you have to wake up and analyze on a program by program basis. And the real concern there is two buckets. One, the funds that are frozen on the front end, right? These are funds that you're trying to get access to that you no longer can. But two, and this is the more terrifying example, Raheel, is what about money potentially being clawed back? Because 2 years from now, Stephen Miller decides that X local government violated some executive order by spending funds in this way. And now the federal government has its hand out and says, we want our money back or we're going to sue you. So what that means is counties, cities, other local governments have to be incredibly careful with how they spend federal dollars, not in an objective, sensible, reasonable way, as we always have been, but now with a bend towards what would Donald Trump say 2 years from now about this expenditure? And frankly, I don't even think Donald Trump's team knows what he's going to say at the end of the day, let alone 2 years from now. So, it's created challenges.
Grab your cowboy hats and get ready to kick up your heels because Bryan, Texas is the place to be on May 17th for the Troubadour Festival. There's only one festival that brings the best of country music to life with chart-topping artists and delicious Texas barbecue, all in one location. The Troubadour Festival has an impressive musical lineup headlined by Shane Smith and the Saints and features artists like Randy Rogers and Wade Bowen, just to name a few. Now, if those great acts weren't enough, the Troubadour Festival will also have over 25 Texas barbecue joints, 3 of which were just recognized by the Michelin Guide, dishing out that signature smoky, mouth-watering Texas barbecue all day long. That right there is worth the price of admission for me. And check this out, on Friday, May 16th, there's going to be an official Troubadour Festival pre-party in historic downtown Bryan at the Palace Theater. This event is free and features local Texas musicians like the Wilder Blue, the Drop Tines, and Jerry Alvarez. Get your tickets now to the Troubadour Festival on May 17th and plan your visit at destinationbryan.com. Trust me when I say this, you've never experienced anything like Meow Wolf before, and nothing I say is going to prepare you for just how incredible Meow Wolf radio tape is, but I'll try. You start by walking into a community radio station, and from there, ordinary objects take you into a mind-bending world where art, sound, and storytelling collide. I mean, over 60 local artists have helped create this experience, and there's truly nothing like it. The best part, Meow Wolf is fun for everyone, and it's why I recommend it to all of my friends and family, and now you. Plus, there's always something new and dynamic happening there, so you can make it a daytime adventure or an adult-only evening. Experience why I always leave Meow Wolf with a creative buzz and an appreciation for the out-of-the-ordinary by buying your tickets at meowwolf.com/visit/Houston. One final tip, don't look at pictures online of what Meow Wolf has in store. Just go in and be ready to have your frequency changed. The Texas coast is special to me, and it's always calling me. My family has made countless memories there, and just off the Texas coast sits a unique beach town marked with salty vibes and sun-soaked memories, Port Aransas. It's a place where family traditions naturally unfold, and you'll find beauty in the island views while taking time to relax between adventures. And with 18 miles of shoreline, there are plenty of adventures, from kayaking with the kids to fishing off the coast or simply cruising down the beach in a golf cart, soaking in the sounds of the Texas coast. That sounds wonderful. Start planning your getaway now with your friends and family, because there's nothing like having multiple generations under one roof so everyone can enjoy those perfect beachfront mornings and that cool Gulf breeze in the evening. So many Texans have anchored their traditions to the island life in Port Aransas, and with one visit, you'll see why. Start your new favorite family tradition in Port Aransas, Texas. Plan your visit to Houston's beach at visitportaransas.com. Do you think they're targeting cities that are, led by Democrats?
I think the idea is to choke off cities and to strengthen the power of the executive branch of government so that money can be spent in ways that only Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Stephen Miller want the money to be spent. That is not just illegal, right, because of the Empowerment Act and provisions in our Constitution that make clear that Congress is a co-equal branch of government. And when they appropriate money to be spent in a certain way, it has to be spent that way. If you want money to be spent in a different way, go get a bill filed, right? Go change the law. You have a majority in both houses of Congress. I think it should be telling to people that the leader of the Republican Party has no desire to go through the legislative process that is led by members of his own party. Instead, he would rather try to rule by edict, but that's just not how government works in the United States of America.
We're also going to talk about how the Democrats are fighting this year. Of course, you are, and also other Democrats. I want to get your thoughts on that, but still want to stick on some more of these executive orders and how this federal funding is going to be impacting the city of Houston. And, one of those is medical research, which Trump has dramatically cut. How is that impacting us here in the medical center?
The Texas Medical Center is the largest medical hub in the entire country. We have a host of hospitals, medical organizations that are housed right here in Houston. My brother is a cancer survivor. He was treated at MD Anderson Cancer Center right here in the city of Houston. It is something that brings great pride to not just the people who work in the Texas Medical Center, but to anybody who's from Houston. We understand how we lead in medical research and medical treatment and finding solutions for people when they're at the lowest point of their lives. And what we're seeing is President Trump issuing cuts for the National Institute of Health and research that is for the purpose of things like finding a cure to cancer, right? To finding medical solutions. It's sad. It's a travesty, but a few different impacts that it's going to have is, one, obviously that's going to lead to job cuts, right? Mm-hmm. There are a number of positions at these research facilities, these research hospitals that are funded by the NIH. So if those funds are cut, those are jobs that we no longer have. But second, and more importantly, it's going to impact medical advancement, medical breakthrough, all for the purpose of trying to make Elon Musk feel good about, finding areas that he can trim the fat from our budget in the federal government. It's a travesty. And I think that's why you've seen such a united front from the medical community stand up and say no. But what's been even more of a travesty is not having seen a united front of Republicans from Texas saying, no, we disagree with this. Elon Musk is not the president of the United States. And we can disagree on issues like whether MD Anderson should have access to these funds to be able to continue to be one of the greatest cancer hospitals in the entire world. We can, agree on all these other issues, but we can disagree on this. But I think what you're seeing is Donald Trump has his thumb on the Republican Party, and there is no willingness to have reasonable discourse within that party. And so it's a travesty that Donald Trump is cutting these funds. But I think what people are probably most pissed off at is that because of something as silly as party allegiance, there are members of Congress who won't stand up and say something about it.
What are you doing to fight this one quickly?
We have signed on to a brief in support of the lawsuit against that executive order as well.
Do you think all this litigation that is happening is actually going to make a difference?
If Donald Trump respects the rule of law, yes.
That's
yeah. I mean, look, we have the situation we have, right? We have the president that we have the Supreme Court that we have the Congress that we have. And in order for this American experiment to work, we have to have clear lanes. It has to be separation of power. The legislator has to legislate, the executive has to run the operations, administer the government,
Hmm.
and the courts have to adjudicate questions of law. And I think on most of these, it's pretty clear that the president is acting illegally or unconstitutionally. And so the question is going to be, I suspect that on at least a few of these, the current United States Supreme Court, which we all know is further to the right than many of the previous iterations of the court, I think there's going to be at least a few of these where they rule against the president. And they say no.
That, I mean, that would be, they would be doing their jobs, right? But, that is a discussion for another day. One last executive order. I know we've run through a lot, so I definitely want to touch on this one. And this is the one that's declared English is the official language in the United States, which is the first in U.S. history, by the way. Do you think that's going to impact services here at Harris County? And, you got to think about all the different languages that are spoken here, over 100 total languages, right? How is this going to impact us here in Houston?
It should not. In fact, my office put out a statement saying that for Harris County government, there's nothing in that executive order that's going to make us provide services in fewer languages, voter registration applications in fewer languages,
Okay.
election ballots in fewer languages. We made that clear because that executive order, I think, was designed less to have substantial impact on how services are provided and more to send a message to a certain part of Donald Trump's base so that they can continue to beat the drum of America first, right? Despite the fact that Elon Musk is, from South Africa, right? He's America first, right? I think that was designed to scare people, to make people realize that, hey, and we have a very clear view of what it means to be an American.
Gotcha. Let's go to environmental justice. And this is one of your passions. And with the EPA under Trump, how is that going to impact your goal to hold companies accountable and make sure that all Houstonians' lives are safe and they're in healthy neighborhoods? I'm thinking especially about neighborhoods like the Fifth Ward, East Harris County, where there are higher cancer rates.
It's been a complete 180 with this current EPA administration than from the previous administration. The previous EPA administrator, Michael Regan, was very heavily invested in the concept of environmental justice. And for those out there that aren't familiar with the term, it's just the idea that everybody deserves clean water, fresh air, clean land, but there are areas of town that have disproportionate amount of pollution for historical reasons, right? All of the concrete batch plants hyper concentrated in a certain neighborhood, right? Other facilities that put out harmful contaminants and pollutants in certain areas. The previous EPA administrator was very committed to that concept. The current EPA administrator, if you just go look at the statements that they've put out, the way that they interact on social media, frankly, it just appears as if the agency is now more focused on being aligned with statements that the president has made or with Elon Musk and Doge than on the core mission of ensuring that everybody has access to clean water,
Mhm.
fresh air, and clean land.
How does TCEQ play into this as well, which is the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality? Because we've talked to several people around the city about how they bring up issues and then, TCEQ won't enforce the EPA guidelines. There's a back and forth as well. Anything with that? Like, do you think that's going to change with the current EPA?
I feel sorry for the TCQ. The TCQ, there are some fantastic people who work there, who love their job, who love doing the work of taking care of people's health and the environment. The way that it typically worked when I first got elected was because the Texas legislature has so grossly underfunded the TCQ and so minimized the scope of their work, their authority, and their mandate. The TCQ is seen by many as being toothless. They have no real ability to steer companies to do the right thing, to mitigate risks, to ensure that they're doing everything they can to protect communities. The way it used to work when I first got elected was we would have a problem with a company having some sort of explosion or pollution issue because they weren't doing the right thing. We would go to the TCQ and say, hey, we would like you to take this kind of action aggressively. They would say no. And then we would run up to the EPA and say, hey, we're having this problem. Can you help? And what we found was many times the EPA was more than willing to partner, to be helpful. Now that we have this new EPA administration in place, what I suspect you're going to see is that agency will be even less aggressive on polluters and environmental disasters than the TCEQ is, which means that we're going to have to try to be creative at the local governmental level to make sure that we're able to hold companies accountable and to protect communities that have disproportionately borne the brunt of pollution.
That's scary because that's going to impact a lot of people who are just living. That is terrifying, Christian.
Oh, it's terrifying. I mean, there are communities right now in Houston where if you go out and talk to them for the past 10 years, they thought this is horrible, right? Nobody's paying attention to us. And this is while I'm in this office fighting and filing lawsuits and doing everything I can. And while we had a what I would say environmental justice friendly EPA. So imagine how they're going to feel now, right? Given that we have a Trump administration EPA in place. It's terrifying. I hate it for the families who live in these communities, but it just, every morning when I get out of bed, I'm just thinking about how can we fight to make sure that these people are protected.
Yeah. And you've obviously been fighting a lot. You're opposing against this Trump administration, but a lot of your fellow Democrats have been really quiet. And we've talked about this on the show. I've expressed my opinions about this on the show. Why do you think so many are being quiet?
I think people are misreading the previous election as Donald Trump and the Republican Party have a mandate. And I think that you have Democrats out there who feel like they're freshly out of a storm and they're waiting for the ship to set. And they're trying to see which way the wind is blowing. And they're trying to see how people view the politics of today and follow those people's beliefs instead of standing on what we believe in and persuading people, winning them over about the importance of the things that we care about. And so I think that's why you're saying two very clear camps. You have camp number one, which is we have to stand up, we have to fight back, we have to make sure that people know about the great things that we've done for working class folks on the economy, pocketbook issues. And then you have the camp of we need to be more friendly with the MAGA wing of the Republican Party, because obviously they were doing something right because they won the national election and a majority in both houses of Congress. I just don't read it that way. I think that they're misreading the tea leaves from the last election.
What advice would you give to local Democrats to get the voter base more engaged, to reconnect with people? You have one statement. You go, all right, y'all, everyone's in this room. Here's how we should do this. What do you tell them?
I would tell people, stop thinking that normal people think about this the way that we on the inside think about it. Everyday people are getting their kids to daycare or school. They're going to work. They're coming home to take care of their kids and put them down. And they're just hoping to have enough money to be able to put their kids in a better situation than they were in, to be able to make sure that their kids have a great future and to have a little bit of money on the side to enjoy life, right? People don't wake up and think Democrats versus Republicans versus independents. I believe that for many Americans, they wake up thinking about what impacts them, not the petty fight of the day that, X elected official had against Y elected official. So what I would say is Democrats should be talking about the things that are important to us and the things that are important to the people that we serve, and less about scoring points and more about trying to build an America that empowers people to have their best shot at the American dream.
Perfectly said, Christian. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for enlightening us on all the things that you're working on and fighting for the people of Houston and Harris County. Thank you.
Thank you, Raheel.
That was Harris County Attorney Chrisitan Menefee. You can learn more about what other things his office is doing with the links in our show notes. Help us grow the show by sharing this episode with 3 of your friends who live in Harris County so they can stay in the know about what's happening locally. Please rate and review the podcast. And if you're new here, be sure to subscribe to CityCast Houston and our daily newsletter, Hey Houston, which brings you fresh Houston news daily, events, moments of joy, and so much more. Also, don't forget to join us in person for our pre-game Houston Rockets mixer on March 25th. We have discounted tickets available that will get you into the pre-game mixer and also the game that night when they take on the Atlanta Hawks. We hope to see you there. That will do it for today. I'm Raheel Ramzanali. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new.